So it's Family Mediation Week, and I am very pleased to say that two very well-known mediators down here on the South Coast have taken time out of their busy day to talk to me. Would you like to introduce yourself? Let's start with Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire Webb and one of the co-founders of Mediation Now.
And I'm Rebecca Hawkins, the other founder of Mediation Now.
And so for people who are coming to this video with no preconception or knowledge at all, Rebecca, can you please explain to me, what is family mediation?
So family mediation helps families or couples sort out disputes that they might have. More often than not, they'll arise from a separation. So they might be sorting out something like the arrangements for their children, how often they're going to spend time with each parent, or the financial arrangements. But they could also be for grandparents who aren't seeing children, or wider issues. It's part of the family law protocol now that families have to look at mediation before they're allowed to access more litigious and confrontational processes. And mediation is designed to be much less confrontational. It enables you to really listen and think about the other person's perspective, to gather information. It's massively more cost effective than going to court. Meetings are ordinarily about an hour to an hour and a half per session, something like that. You could have your solicitors with you if you wished, or other professionals, but it's designed to help certainly people who need to parent together able to make sure they're able to do that in the future by getting rid of some of the bits and pieces and the noise.
Claire, presumably, does this depend on two people being able to sit in a room and speak to each other civilly?
No, not at all. Obviously, it's easier if you can, but if you can't, or you just don't feel that you would put your best points forward if you're in the same room as each other. Some people, it's not the fact that they don't like each other, it's just that they feel that they get tongue-tied and it becomes a motive if they're in the same room. So it doesn't really matter if you're in the same room, or we can do it in separate rooms, or nowadays, because everything is in virtual, we just have breakout rooms on Zoom, and I can go between, or Rebecca and I can go between the two rooms, and you don't even have to see each other. So it's all completely doable. And it doesn't mean that you hate each other. Some people it does, but a lot of people it's just easier to tell me what you want and what you feel than it is to tell the other person. And then it's easier for the other person to tell me whether that's agreeable to them or not. So it just makes things easier.
Without being facetious, who are you? What makes a mediator?
You can come to mediation from all walks of life. There's therapy-based mediators, but Rebecca and I are both solicitor mediators. So we were family law solicitors and still are, and we're family law solicitors practicing in the traditional way for many, many years before we went to mediation. So the benefit of that is that we both can bring what the courts will do, what solicitors will have advised you, what are the pitfalls, what are the good things. If you haven't thought of it, we'll be able to prompt you and say most people in your situation also think about whatever that may be, you know, whether it might be maintenance or, you know, how to transfer your house, all of those kinds of legal things. But you can qualify as a mediator from a therapy background, from a solicitor background, all sorts, but all of us and everybody at Mediation Now are all solicitor mediators, so we all come from that legal background.
Rebecca, I know it was a few years ago now, but when did you first discover mediation as a concept, and why did you pursue it?
Mediation, I probably became familiar with it in the early 2000s, but it was so rarely used at that stage, and I was quite new to being a lawyer, and court was always just the way everybody did it. So it's quite a new practice, and I think that once I had children of my own, I didn't really feel like waving my fist in the air and stamping my feet all the time was necessarily the right way to do it, that there must be a better way. I'd heard of mediation by then, and it was starting to become a little bit more mainstream. Claire had qualified a year before me. I qualified, we knew each other well, we were in different local practices. And then I said to her, really, don't you think we should be doing this more than the other stuff we're doing? And that's really how it all started in 2007.
You discovered it in the early 2000s. Well, it's only 20 years ago, and as you and I both know, in the legal profession, that's like a blink of an eye. Why do you think it's become so popular and pretty much well known now?
I think people don't like to be told what to do or have decisions imposed upon them. That's the first thing. So it leaves you in control of your own decision making. That's a real positive of mediation. It's cost effective. And the other thing is, of course, for the last 20 years, what have we had in the justice sector? We've had lots of cuts, and the courts are overburdened. It's not the judge's fault they can't make a decision within 12 months, but that's often the case, and it will take people a very long time to get all the way through a court system. And so mediation offers a real alternative. Once you're in court, it's very difficult to come out of that. You're positioned, it's very difficult to back down. In mediation, there's lots of little escape routes that you can compromise in a way that makes you feel that you're really in control of that.
Claire, your passion has seen you also join various groups, committees, you've been involved in government papers. You've really been driven by this concept. Why has it touched you so much that you built this chapter of your career on it?
I think for me, it started, I was acting for a client in court, and it was a particularly nice client. And I was very aware that even in a case where there was very little blame and shame, that it was still a really horrible day. And I was just talking to that client, and they were saying, this is probably the worst day of my life. And I thought that really shouldn't be the case, because the two of them actually didn't have a lot of animosity. And if it felt that bad for two people where there wasn't very much animosity, just feel how much that must be uncomfortable for those who really, really are struggling. And it just really hit me that if it was me, I really wouldn't want someone telling me what was in my children's best interests and what I should do with my money. And so it just felt very right to be able to say to people, what do you think? What do your children want? What's best for you? And I often also think we organise our own weddings, don't we? We organise our own lives in that way. So why do we give it to someone else to undo it all? And just with a bit of help and a bit of support and signposting to the right places, lots of people can do it themselves.
Rebecca, it might be inappropriate to say, in which case you can tell me shut up and but did the legal profession initially resistant to mediation because some lawyers, solicitors might have seen it a threat to their livelihood, or has it all been quite harmonious all the way along?
I think initially probably you're right, there probably was a little bit of resistance because, and me too, I didn't understand how it worked to begin with, so somebody was potentially taking away my work. But actually when you explain to lawyers, and there are still some that are resistant, but when you explain to them that you get these clients back, I'm not taking your client. I can't ever act for them as a legal client. I can only ever help in mediation. So you're going to get them back. If they need help in between sessions, I'll be sending them back to you. So there is still a lot of working together that lawyers and mediators can do. We recommend solicitors all the time. It's really powerful for somebody to have a little bit of legal advice that they can build on, or the ability to go and take advice on tax planning or accountancy or how you sell a house, or pensions information, which is a really big one. And solicitors can help with that, because I can't tell a client what to do in mediation. All I can do is help them work out what the options are and think about how it might work for them.
Claire, the last year since last Family Mediation Week has been chaotic. It has been quite dramatic. And if anyone wants to look at how you've coped with responding to Zoom, I know you've got videos on the Mediation Now website. I know that you've responded really well with technology. Where we are now, what do you see as 2021 bringing to the profession?
Oh, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we did so much last year and it was all such a baptism of fire. And it was sort of, hope for the best. And I remember, having to learn how to use Zoom, which now feels like part of, almost the same as having a pen and paper in front of you. I think it's more of the same. I think it's being brave, actually, this year. I think the light is at the end of the tunnel. I think we will be able to offer both to people, which I think is so important. So we'll be able to offer people to come into the office again and actually do face-to-face where that works for them. And what is even better is, before COVID, we were always really worried about online. And now it's just something that will be there. So for people who live geographically apart, or for people who just like virtual platforms. You know, we've got so much more to offer. And, you know, I was having a conversation with a solicitor this morning. It also means that your solicitor can dial in. So, you know, you can have other people there, you can keep the costs down, because what was always really scary for people is they wanted their solicitors there, but the solicitor charges, quite rightly, for their time to travel to our offices and all of that, whereas now they can just dial in on Zoom and it keeps the costs down and it gives them extra alternatives. So I think it's a really fantastic opportunity for us to embrace it even more, be positive, and just keep working forward.
Rebecca, how has your being a mediator changed to this online world? Have you changed behaviour or techniques?
I think probably I've changed some of my techniques. They've just been refined a little for online in a way that I might not do exactly the same thing face to face. So dealing with clients who are upset is quite tricky by Zoom, so I've had to change a little bit of the way I do that. Yeah, it's just, as Claire says, I can't believe how quickly the last year has gone, given everything that has happened in the last year. It has been it was a struggle to begin with, but we stayed positive and we changed and we evolved, and I think that's what we're going to continue to do.
And so, Claire, just to finish up, we have to pay some attention to the client. What kind of headspace should a couple be in when they're considering or going into mediation?
Any, to be perfectly honest. There is never not a time to think about mediation. Whether you are in the very, very early days and you just want some knowledge about what mediation is, some signposting, some information, whether you're in court proceedings but are thinking, goodness, we're spending an awful lot of money, we might be able to do this. And there is no time that you shouldn't consider it. It doesn't mean it's always right, and Rebecca and I won't allow people to do it when it's not right for them. If it's too soon and somebody actually needs some time, or if they feel too entrenched or they're too at risk, then that's not the time. But it doesn't mean don't have a conversation with us, because there are different options out there. There's also different options to mediation. There's collaborative law, there's arbitration, and we are quite happy to signpost that person to what is right for that person. You know, no one ever fits all, no system fits all. So, you know, what I would say to everyone is take the opportunity to have a chat, find what works for you. Mediation is just one of the many options that are out there, and is a cost-effective one.
And I think my final question is going to go to both of you, but starting with Claire. What we're all dying to know is, how has mediation affected your life? Are you this serene wife and mother who never gets upset and can always negotiate her children driving her up the wall? We want to know, what's a mediator's personal life like?
What a question. This is when I want to press mute. Maybe that's my answer, actually. That's how I maybe deal with my children, press mute.
Oh, it's a tricky one because nobody's ever perfect, and I don't think there are very many. Not all hairdressers have perfect hair, so we all have our little foibles and our little quirks. But I'd like to think that when I've had a really tricky day, or when I've seen a child in mediation, and Claire and I have walked away from that thinking, goodness, that I go home and I give my kids a big hug, and it brings me back to what really is important.
So Claire, if anyone is interested in mediation or wants to talk it further, how should they go about contacting you?
So our website is www.mediation-now.co.uk, and our telephone number is 02392 481183.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good family mediation week.
Thank you.
Thank you.